To feature boot camp from ScriptCamp. This is kind of like our bread and butter course. This is basically how to write a movie 101. You're going to go all the way from idea to finished draft over the course of 8 weeks, whether or not you've ever written a movie in the past before, or you're just trying to kind of learn the basics, or maybe just trying to learn these techniques in storytelling that are going to apply to lots of other different types of writing too. We're going to do everything from planning out story beats and trying to we're going to start actually with loglines, where we just kind of express in one sentence what is your story about. We're going to move from there to story beats, where we will try to figure out what happens in each of the major scenes of the movie. And then next from there, we're going to move into scene cards, where we try to figure out what happens in every scene, meaning we should have a pretty good sense of what happens on every page of the script before we even write one single page of the actual formatted, what we call going to pages when you're writing dialogue, blocking out scenes, things like that. So we spend the first half of the course on just organizing yourself and making that really comprehensive roadmap to move forward, so that by the time you get to the actual writing of pages, then you'll have figured out all of those really difficult questions of what should happen now. Like, we're trying to separate that process of figuring out what happens from actually being able to execute it on the page. And by doing that, you will be able to go through those pages much quicker and get to the end of your first draft in just those 4 weeks of actual pages writing time. So we got plenty of other folks, plenty of people in the chat who have gone through one of these boot camps before. So we'll definitely have some time to maybe ask if prior boot campers have any advice for anyone just trying this out. We also have a couple intro slides to tell you just a little bit more about us. If you're newer on Discord, the most important thing is maybe just check in the bottom left corner to make sure your microphone is muted. You can find a small gray microphone icon in the bottom left-hand corner of your Discord screen. If you click that, it'll show up next to your name, and that means your mic will be muted. So please keep that on until you're called upon. We will have lots of opportunities to speak out loud, and as screenwriting is one of the most social forms of writing, you should prepare to speak out loud and articulate very often what your, the things that you're working on. You should try to speak your ideas over the microphone if you can. You can also contribute via text if you want to. On the left-hand side of your Discord window, you'll find a Classroom channel that you can mouse over and find a small white word bubble. That'll open up a window called Classroom on the right, and you can use that for text questions and comments that I can take on a kind of rolling basis as the class goes on. Or if for some reason you can't use your mic, like you're, in a room full of yapping dogs or something like that, then you can just participate via text for today if you'd like. But we always say, try to get used to this idea of speaking out loud and articulating your various ideas, even at the early stages. So what is ScriptCamp? We're a screenwriting community focused on helping take you from concept to idea to first draft to more polished script, with lots of free classes, events, and workshops, and some classes limited to our supporting members too. Like every bootcamp class beyond this one, the free first classes will always be public and open to everybody to give everyone a taste of what the program is like. But if you'd like to continue past this week, you should sign up for ScriptCamp. SkillCamp is the name of our company, and we are a non-profit that brings free and low-cost classes to help you reach your life goals. We've got many different servers, as you can see here. ScriptCamp was our first one and is our biggest and most popular, but we're growing all these other ones over time with many different activities, workshops, meetups on these different groups. So definitely check out Film Camp, Creator Camp, Tune Camp, Word Camp, Design Camp, and Lingo Camp, and Code Camp if you want to try out some of these other skills and classes, many of which have free events on them every week. Some of them are very much still growing and only have about 100 members or less, and we don't have any actual organized classes on yet, such as Lingo Camp and Design Camp. We haven't actually had any classes on there yet, but we have weekly classes on things like Tune Camp, Code Camp, and lots of events on ScriptCamp. You'll find something to do every single day of the week on ScriptCamp. Here's just a little bit about me. I've been a signed and rep screenwriter since 2017, when I first placed in the top 10 of the Launchpad feature writing contest. Since then, worked on Creepshow back in 2019, have a thriller script set up in Hollywood right now, and I teach the boot camps and weekly writers labs. My expertise is mostly in the world of horror, thriller, and action, but I'm writing a lot of books lately, mostly in the kind of fantasy, sci-fi subgenres. So that's where I am personally, but no matter what you're writing, you can write whatever you want in the course. That's just what I will be able to give best advice on. Here's a bunch of stuff coming up. We have Best Protagonist class on Wednesday. That's in 5 days at 6 o'clock. Best Protagonist for your story. That's going to be on ScriptCamp, and you can tell which camp or which server that the class will be on by the color coding here. ScriptCamp is always going to be the yellow gold color. The teal is going to be for WordCamp, which is our novel writing focused server. We're getting ready to start a brand new novel writing bootcamp on the 25th, where you're going to write a book, a whole novel in 12 weeks, starting Saturday, February 25th from 12 to 2, and that's going to be Saturdays 12 to 2 for the next couple months. Plenty of other things coming up today. We have that session 1 of the bootcamp will be Friday, February 24th. That's next week at 6 o'clock. And this bootcamp will be running in this time slot for the next 8 weeks. Pilot class, new session of that starts too. If you want to write TV, come by March 5th. That'll be Sundays from 11 to 1. And that first class, after the intro, the week 1 after week 0, will be Sunday, March 12th. We also have things like writing action and adventure. That's tomorrow. That's going to be a brand new class in WordCamp, completely new content, all about writing adventure genre novels. We'll look at outlining on the 22nd at 6. We have a query letter class on the 23rd, both looking at query letters, studying professional queries that have worked, but also just looking at the query process as a way of organizing and understanding your own story. And then, like I said, that last class on the list is the first session of our new novel bootcamp on the 25th. Here's a list of everything coming up. On the right is all the kind of recurring clubs and groups and weekly events. We have lots of opportunities to get free feedback on your work. We have 2 different swaps, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday. If you want to trade a script with somebody for feedback, we have table reads Sundays at 2. You can submit your script to be read by the group and get feedback from the community. We have animation classes Mondays at 6. Animation workshop is Mondays at 6. Animation lab, which is more like a class, that's Tuesdays at 3 on TuneCamp. I could just read everything on the list, but I think I've gone over the major stuff that I'm running. We do have new things starting up, like web development. That's new to me. I didn't even know about that one. Web development bootcamp starting in April. The servers over here that you see on the left are going to be the ones with the most consistent classes. So ScriptCamp, WordCamp, TuneCamp, and CodeCamp. Everything else over here on the right, these are all ScriptCamp weekly meetups and events. Tomorrow is Writer's Lab, and that's for members. If you're a supporting member, come by. It's like office hours from 4 to 6 p.m. You can come by with any questions or topics you'd like to hear about related to the craft, and I can give you feedback on up to 5 pages of anything you bring in, whether that's outline, treatment, or script. Okay, what is the bootcamp? So this is a course that's going to take you from idea to first draft, or from rough draft to more polished script if you're coming in with something that you have finished previously, but this is really geared more towards brand new idea. Maybe it's your first ever movie that you've ever written. You don't know anything about storytelling. You've just watched movies and enjoy them. That's fine. Using our step-by-step practical method in these 2-hour weekly classes. So this time slot every week for the next 8 weeks. And different time slots for different types of writing. We see that in the past we've done things like 4 weeks for a short film, or 4 weeks for sci-fi, or the genre-focused boot camps we've done in the past. We've done 6 weeks for TV, 8 weeks for feature, 12 weeks for a novel. You're going to write the first draft of one of those things, whether or not you ever have before. It's totally cool, and it may not turn out that well, and that's okay. We always try to emphasize to everyone the goal is not to write something amazing that's going to sell and make you rich and get you a career right away. You have to kind of look at this as going to the gym and running laps, because if we look at screenwriting as if we acknowledge how difficult screenwriting is to break into, we can sort of look at it and say, okay, there's less paid screenwriters than there are Olympic athletes, for instance, or it's hard. They say it's easier to get into Major League Baseball than it is to become a paid screenwriter. So we have to understand your first script is not going to sell and get you a career. Your second script probably won't. This takes about 10 years for most people of working on your craft before you're going to get to the point where you'll start taking meetings professionally for screenwriting. That's not true for everybody, but that's just like a kind of rule of thumb. Novels are different, more people will work on a novel in their spare time for months or years, coming back to it and working on it here and there, because it's nowhere near as fast-paced and demanding of an industry as writing books. But we try to, support and accommodate no matter what it is that you're trying to work on. We have some class or some camp that covers those skills. So here's the overview for this class. This is week 0 today, so we're going to do an overview of the whole process, and I can give feedback on those just initial ideas that you guys have, or maybe you've even gone so far as to have a logline ready, which is that one sentence expression of that question, what is the story about? so I can start to give you that preliminary feedback today. Don't take it too hard if it's just like your very first version of the idea. Earlier ideas that are less developed require more feedback and require more work, so you may hear right away something about that might not work, and just try to get used to hearing lots of feedback, because screenwriting is so much just based on, are you able to receive notes well and to accommodate those notes and to work with that person that has been giving you those notes in a respectful and graceful way, and all these things. So try, I guess, to just to start working on those skills. I'm not an executive that's actually giving you notes. All I am is trying to teach you the skills that you can learn to figure out your own process to write movies. Or to write anything, really. But we really do emphasize this very organized process. The whole first half of the course, as you can see, just look at the list behind me, the first 4 weeks are all planning and organizing. You don't actually write a single page of the script itself, and nor do you need to download any professional screenwriting software until halfway. So this is all very manageable within something like Google Docs. And anytime that you're sharing documents within the class, you should be doing either a PDF or a Google document. Make sure to just check your sharing settings by clicking the blue lock icon in the top right corner of the Google Doc to make sure that anyone can view the link at least. But today we'll be, just going over just the 8-week process, and we'll be refining these log lines a little bit and just getting these kind of first impressions of the idea that you might want to bring to this class. Or maybe you have a few different ideas and you're not sure which one I want to bring to the course and what I want to commit to over the next 8 weeks, and that's okay as well. We're going to say by next week, try to have settled on your idea. So if you have multiple ideas, we can give you that early feedback today to try to steer you down one path versus the other. And maybe you have no ideas at all, and that's okay too. You might just need some time to learn a little bit about what we're doing here, like what the differences between the different genres are, for instance. If you are here, I assume you have a pretty high interest in things like watching movies, reading books, watching TV, things like that. So I would hope that you are a fan of these things and that you are consuming these things routinely, and you have, a favorite movie, for instance, or a favorite series, or a favorite any of these things. And by the same token that we should be continuing to consume media of different types, especially the types that we're interested in, you also must constantly be reading if you want to learn how to actually write these, very unintuitive documents. Nobody grows up reading screenplays for the most part, so almost no one has that intuitive sense of what it should look like or what a good script looks and feels like on the page. So you really do have to keep your reading up in order to make sure that you're learning all the skills that you need to be. I say 3 scripts a week if you want to be a pro screenwriter is about right. Maybe 1 script a week if you have less time to commit to it for now. But it doesn't take substantially longer to read a script than it would be to watch the movie from most people. Everyone reads at different levels, of course, but we have lots of resources to find plenty of scripts to choose from to read in the server. So first half is all about planning. This week is going to just be overview and giving that initial feedback. Next week, we're going to finalize those log lines, and you're going to bring your, if you have received feedback on it the first week, bring it next week, and we're going to try to make it even better. And you're going to be filling out what we call a sketchbook, which is something you can actually make really soon. In just the next slide or two, I'll have you make the sketchbook already. So the sketchbook is just a blank document, like a Google document with nothing in it. There's nothing fancy about this. There's no template for this, all except for a couple things at the very top, where you're going to try to gather all of your different ideas for this one project and not keep them in a bunch of separate files or sticky notes all over the place. You want to keep everything in just one document that you can refer back to, and you're going to use that to organize all of your loose ideas for lines of dialogue or, characters or moments of the story, locations they go to, special rules of the world or scenes that you had in mind, or an ending that you had in mind, anything like that. You're just going to try to collect all the unsorted pieces and keep them all in the sketchbook so that by the time we get enough in there, then you can move it to the next step, which is the story beats, which is going to be week 2. So that's going to be the broad strokes of the entire movie. It's our first class on outlining and structure. And week 2, we're going to be trying to complete that story beat summary, which is a list of most of the major scenes of the movie. Week 3 is all about scene cards. So that's going to be expanding that story beats outline into that full paragraph for every single scene. So we know what happens ideally on every page before you even begin. And because we're going to spend that extra time on all this planning and organization, we're not going to struggle in the middle of the script with, I don't know what happens next, I give up, which is the most common reason that people don't finish scripts. They haven't organized enough. We start the script on March 17th, so we go to pages is the term that we use, meaning you go from pre-writing and outlining to actually writing those script pages. And from then on, you're going to be writing about 20 pages of script a week. That's like 4-ish pages if you just work on weekdays. And we're going to go through each of those classes focusing on a different... There will be a lecture that focuses on the section of script that you are in, if you're keeping up with those milestones. And it's okay if you fall behind, or if you need extra help. That's what our lab sessions are for. Or if you end up not being able to finish within the time frame of the class, you're not going to get a grade or whatever. There's no grades. It's all about just trying to keep up with the milestones so that you are accomplishing, most of our objectives here, which are to write a movie in 8 weeks. And when you're working professionally, a time frame that you're often going to get is something like 8 to 12 weeks for a first draft. So I think it's a good sort of like benchmark to aspire to, even if you're not going to be able to complete the script in every single boot camp. But try your best. And if you fall way too behind, you can always join the next one. These go on a cycle. So once these 8 weeks are over, we'll start a new one, and you can maybe join the next one with a bit of a head start if you fall too far behind. So week 4 is beginnings, week 5 is transitioning from first act to second act, week 6 is second act, week 7 is escalation, so that's the latter half of the second act, working towards that, break into 3, and then week 8 is third act with our first draft completed by April 21st. All right, any questions so far just before we go any further? Here's a question in the chat from... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, if you can't make all these meetings, you're going to be on YouTube, correct?
So the first one, this is on YouTube right now. We're live on YouTube. This is a free public class. For the following classes, those are for our subscribing members. So if you subscribe to ScriptCamp, you'll be able to access them in our video library on our website, but they won't be publicly online.
Thank you.
Sure, good question. I saw a question from Pollock in the chat who says, what's the difference between animation and live action in regards to format? There's really not a difference. The scripts look pretty much exactly the same. How many pages is recommended for a draft? Another question from Pollock. You're going to want to aim for 90 pages to... the sort of textbook definition for a script length is 90 to 120 pages. If you're writing certain genres, you can go a little shorter than that. And you have I see a lot of success nowadays in horror thriller in the 80 to 90 page range. So if you're writing horror thriller, feel free to write something. And if you land at like 82 or 83 and it's a tight, amazing script, that's fine. Other genres are going to kind of have trouble under 90 pages, and it's going to be a sign that something's wrong if we see, like, I don't know, a historical drama and it's like 81 pages. We're going to be like, what's going on here? So certain genres are expected to be tilted more towards that end of 120. Obviously, you don't usually want to go above 120 unless you've written the next, 10 Commandments or Spartacus or some amazing thing. Then unless it's absolutely amazing, then every page over the limit just makes your reader more and more annoyed. So it's better to aim for a shorter script if you're newer at this, or if you just don't really know what you're doing or what to focus on. Try not to overshoot. Don't pick something too ambitious, and don't pick an idea that you're way too into or that you think you have to get just right, or it has to be perfect, or it's your father's life story and he'll be so disappointed in you that he'll disown you as a son if you never get his story right. You should be trying to aim for ideas that you can execute on a pretty quick time frame and that won't require a ton of research. That's what I sort of mean in terms of this is like running laps. You got to kind of pick stuff that you're not too passionate about and that you're going to be able to bring in within the deadline. So that's just some suggestions for you. In general, 80-page bare minimum, aim for 90, and you'll probably overshoot it a little bit and you'll be fine. Other questions?
One last one about the subscription. Is that like $9.99 a month?
So, good question. Why did I bring it up? So, if you go to scriptcamp.net, you can see our different membership options. Unlimited membership is $49 a month, but comes with a 2-week free trial, 2 weeks of access to everything we do. And if you buy yearly, you will get 40% off. So that would just be $29 a month.
Very not bad at all. Thank you.
Thank you. So head over to scriptcamp.net/membership if you'd like to sign up. Scroll down where it says free trial. Click that there, and if you've not already done so, you can get access to everything we do. Or if you really want to, you can buy this course just on its own and not become a member, but we usually recommend become a member. You get access to so many more things than just this class, And by becoming a member of ScriptCamp, you're a member of SkillCamp, which means that you get to take classes on all of our different servers. So you could do, coding, languages, novel writing, TV writing, screenwriting, everything that we do here. Nacho has left a poll in the chat. If you plan to enroll but have not yet done so, you can click that small green check mark. Oh, has he posted it? Maybe not. But in any case, in just a moment, that will be in the chat. So if you are looking for that, make sure to mouse over the classroom channel and click that small white word bubble that says open chat. Scroll down to that blue poll and you will see some numbers at the bottom of the screen. If you click that number 1, that will indicate I plan to sign up, and we'll just give you instant access to all of our exclusive member chat channels, and that'll just indicate that you intend to join us. All right, any last questions before we go further? Cool. Let's proceed then. In that case, this is just restating what I just said. scriptcamp.net/classes, and you can buy the course on its own, or you can start that free trial, scriptcamp.net/membership. Okay, so maybe feel free to unmute and speak out loud if you'd like to tell us a bit about yourself. What are your goals as a writer? Is this your first ever script that you've ever written? Have you written other movies before? What kind of thing are you hoping to write? What are you interested in? What are some of your favorite movies or favorite writers or favorite directors? Anything like this? Let's hear from the students. What would you guys like to share? Go ahead.
Hello?
Hi, go ahead, Monique.
Yes. I'm an actress, but I'm interested in creating my own content. I'm also interested in starting my own production studio. The reason why I want to do that is because of the fact that a lot of actors, well, some of the actors sit around and wait for their agent to call them for a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be one of those.
Right. That makes sense.
And that's where they call it the desperate actor comes in at, and they just do anything. I've seen a lot of careers fall short, and I don't want to be in that predicament.
Sure, yeah. If you're an actor and you're able to write your own material or create your own shows that you yourself would star in or have a role in, that's a method we've seen used by people like Phoebe Waller-Bridge or Donald Glover, or a lot of comedians that have made shows for themselves to star on. So absolutely a good thing to be able to do, to broaden your skill set and have more to offer than an actor that would just be able to do, only not able to create your own opportunities. So
yes.
Yeah, always good to be able to make those, those chances to succeed for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks, Monique.
Okay. You're welcome.
Anyone else? Feel free to weigh in.
All right, yeah, Matt. I've been writing for I think I've been writing for 3 years, and I've kind of slowly gotten to realize what my genre is, and that's either action or science fiction.
Nice.
I've learned James Cameron is my favorite director just because I pushes technology and the stories he kind of tells and the worlds he makes. So those are those kind of stories I want to tell. Some not big budget, but some kind of action-y sci-fi stuff.
Sure, great. Love that stuff. Anyone else?
Yeah, I am really into a lot of Japanese stuff. But Satoshi Kon, one of my favorite screenwriters, directors, etc., animators. He was great. His all of his films I've seen so far were super inspirational, as far as took a toll on the work I was writing. Yeah, I just want to get to a point where if I feel like making something cool, I just have the confidence to go and do it,
Great. Yeah, for sure. That confidence is a big part of this. And a lot of the time, when you start moving into the scripts that people are really responding well to, it's when you find your footing enough as a writer to approach stories that you are like, that's a challenge for me that I feel like I want by trying to take on that challenge, I'm going to improve myself and like get better and better every time. So I often try to pick scripts that have a challenge built into it, so that you are kind of building those new avenues and those new pathways in your mind that you're able to, next time you're like, oh god, now I reached this sequence that's so difficult, but I've done it before. I've done something harder before. And so the more that you sort of do push yourself, the more that you will just be able to do on the page, with not just the skill to execute it, but the confidence that you're able to. So that's a great mindset to use when you're going into this. Thanks, Paul. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm Jay. I was in a script writing group about a year ago, I guess, and they went face to face, and so it was distance, and I couldn't continue, so I kind of gave up on it. But I saw this pop up, and I thought I'd give it an opportunity again. Kind of have an idea I've been mulling over, so we'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens today.
Sure, great, okay. Yeah, this is the fact that it's online makes it a little easier it's more convenient to get to these classes, certainly. And if you miss one or something, it's no big deal. You can always watch the recording afterwards, as opposed to an in-person class where if you miss it, you just miss it. So yeah, a little bit, we try to have a little easier access here than a lot of other education opportunities, and I hope something clicks for you and that you're able to get excited about writing a brand new movie. Thanks, Jay. One or two more people want to weigh in?
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm actually into adventure stories, and I've actually recently got into horror.
Great. So you're writing one of those for the boot camp, you think?
If I get into the boot camp, how much does it pay?
How much does it pay? We don't pay you to be in the boot camp. What? Sorry.
You don't.
How much does it cost? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
You guys don't think you're going to get paid to be in this, do you? Okay. So yeah, you can sign up if you sign up for monthly, it's $49 a month for unlimited. It comes with a 2-week free trial. Or you could sign up for yearly, and then it would be $29 a month.
Okay. I'll consider it.
Okay. Or we can pay you if
I'm
looking. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking. Yeah, sorry about that. That was a bit.
You're good.
That was a slip up.
No,
I meant how much does it like cost? I didn't mean to.
You're fine. I'm with you. So hopefully you'll find some action or horror type idea to work on, and we have a free adventure writing class tomorrow in WordCamp if you want to come by.
Oh, that's sweet. I already have adventure ideas in my head.
Great.
Like I want to write Journey to the Center of the Earth, like a style adventure, because I really like going into that world.
Yeah, come by tomorrow. Pulp adventure is the subgenre there, so check it out. Yeah, tomorrow from 12 to 2 on WordCamp.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I think that's around it. I mean, I've already started writing my own script. It's about like 40 pages at this point.
Great. So for the boot
camp,
would you be wanting to continue that one, or are you starting a new one for the boot camp?
I think I might start a new one for the boot camp. Actually, it might be beneficial.
I would recommend it if you're trying to decide between should I bring something I was already working on or some brand new idea. Probably a better idea to start something brand new, and because this is so much about organizing at the very beginning before we get into pages. But it's up to you. You can do it how you want.
Yeah, I'm still debating either to join the boot camp. But
today's class will convince you. Go ahead.
I'll consider it.
All right. Awesome. Thanks for weighing in.
That's good. All right.
Feel free also, if anyone has not already chimed in, you can do so in the chat, and we would like to hear from you. Feel free to share your goals or your experience level, what it is that you're hoping to work on or achieve in the course. Okay, so here's just the ground rules for the ideas that you should be picking. If you don't have an idea yet, maybe just think of what's some fun mashup of genres that I like but that I've never seen together before, or that maybe don't seem like they initially fit together at all. If you're like, I don't know, I really like courtroom dramas and I really, really like horror movies. Could I do a courtroom horror movie? And try to just think of some way that might make sense. That's usually a fun way to approach stuff like this. You're looking at this more like lifting weights or running laps. We're not trying to dig down and find the masterpiece, next great American novel kind of thing. We're trying to just find an idea that you'll be excited enough to work on for 8 weeks, and you'll be able to finish within that time frame. So it's not going to require a ton of research, or it's not going to require getting someone's real life story exactly correct, or else they're going to be upset at you and sue you or whatever. So try not to pick something that's going to require tons of work, or tons of extra work besides just the. It's a lot of work to write a script. We don't want to be making that harder for ourselves if we're putting it in such a tight time frame, especially if you have less experience doing this. So that's my first piece of advice. Second, you want to get used to sharing all of your work with me and with your fellow students and with everyone, even at these early stages. It's tough for a lot of artists who are not used to this to be sharing like these little snippets of their maybe kind of sort of ideas, and then they get notes or feedback on it right away. It can be hard to hear that, or it might be hard. You've been wanting to work on this script ever since you were a kid, and you tell everyone the idea, and right away they're like, I don't get it. And that's difficult to hear that. So try to just get used to this idea of constant feedback from everyone. You don't have to take everyone's feedback or anyone's feedback. We're not going to buy your script if you do it well enough. We're just trying to build the skills necessary that you will learn how your process works and how you can write better and better scripts. And of course, I'm going to be sharing what I know as a professional who's been writing, being paid to write things in Hollywood since 2017. I do know some stuff about this, especially in my kind of genres. If it's outside of my genres of experience, if you're writing a rom-com or a slice of life or a kind of anime type story or something like that that's just out of my world, then I will not presume to know all the nuances of it. I will inform you where the boundaries of my knowledge are. And you can write, like I said, you can write whatever you want, but just be prepared to hear feedback on it in some way. And a lot of it. Every week you'll hear some kind of feedback. So just try to thicken no one's going to be a jerk about it. We're just going to be, and no one's trying to control your life or ruin your movie or any of these things. We're trying to, make it the best possible version of what you are intending to create. So try to get used to that idea very early. The last thing is that if you're going to continue past today, we recommend that you use your real name in the bootcamp. So this class you don't have to, but in the industry we can't use screen names. So definitely change that username to, if you really don't want to use your real name, you can use a nickname or something like that. But after this class, just try to keep that in mind. So we're picking ideas that are brand new and that are fun and exciting and are just going to keep us engaged and energized and interested enough to keep doing this for 8 weeks. We want to avoid true stories, anthologies, which just have their entirely own separate rules that we don't want to get into. And we want to avoid adaptations for the most part, unless your adaptation is so different from the original. I don't know, you're doing a Christmas Story, but it's set in space, and instead of Scrooge, he's an alien or something. I don't know. You see what I mean? If you're doing something totally different, then perhaps it could still work for the class. But for general purposes, don't pick anything that's going to require tons of extra research or is going to require a lot of extra work that you take on yourself when you don't need to. So to that end, don't write time travel. Just trust me. Every time someone takes this as a challenge and they're like, I'm going to do the time travel script. Well, don't. You're not going to like it. You're going to have a bad time. We've never seen someone complete a time travel script in a boot camp who has attempted to do so. Don't do it. Also, probably don't do a historical script because that just requires that extra research. So, unless maybe you already have a solid grounding in that time period, or maybe you studied it in college or you majored in, ancient, feudal Mesopotamia or whatever it is, then you might be able to write a historical in the time frame of the class. But if it's going to require a lot of extra research, probably don't pick it. And also to the same end of don't probably pick time travel, Be really wary of scripts that involve difficult on-the-page conventions, especially in the sci-fi space, like clones, parallel universes, or anything where there's multiple copies of the same people. And beware of scripts that have structures that entirely or that innately hinge on complicated flashback or montage, or I should say complicated flashback structures, meaning things like alternate timelines. If you're writing Gillian Flynn type movies like Gone Girl, where there's like multiple shifting timelines and multiple, you know, POV characters that we deliberately change perspective halfway through and like sort of start following someone else, and then we flash back and we're like dancing between all these different storylines. Those things are really, really difficult to pull off. You probably will have trouble finishing those in 8 weeks, but this is just a great time to take a big swing and write something wacky or weird or funny while building the skills and the fundamentals to you know, just by finishing it, you will be building a lot of skills that you didn't even know that you had in you, or that you didn't know that you were capable of. So many people try this and then just don't finish the script, and as a result, they keep starting something else, and they never finish something, so they never move to the next skill bracket of this. And unless you start consistently finishing things, you're not going to reach the next skill bracket. The 3 things you need to be doing to be a writer are reading, number 1, so there's no getting around that. Every week I will ask, what scripts have you read this week, and what would you like to tell us about? It's not like a quiz, it's not a trick question. I just want to know you've been reading stuff and have been paying attention. So you got to be reading, you got to be writing, and you got to be finishing things and moving on. That's the 3rd thing, is that skill of moving on is the one that a lot of writers never conceive that they will have to work on this ability to move on from things, meaning not only eventually saying this is done, I've done all I can do on this story, I need to just start the next one. That's part of moving on. The next moving on might be, or the next aspect of moving on might be something like, I've submitted this everywhere I can possibly submit it. Now what do I do? Well, usually write something new is the answer to that. So that idea of reading, writing, and moving on, that's all you need to do. There is no college course you have to take to be a writer. You don't have to take this class to be a writer. You don't have to take any one class or any podcast or read any book. There's nothing you prescriptively have to do except for read, write, and finish things. So I hope, if nothing else, then through this course you're gaining, you know, an understanding of how vital each of those steps are. Okay, so 8 weeks. Here's the steps. Let's look at them. We start with a logline. We'll look at that today. That's a 1-sentence expression of the idea. So if somebody asks what's it about, you're essentially going to be able to answer with this sentence. You won't have a completed one by the end of this week, probably. That's okay. The goal is to finalize it. Either if you get feedback on it this week, try to improve it by next class, or at the very least try to finish it by the end of next class. So sketchbook comes after logline. That's going to be that like a collage of all your unsorted ideas that pertain to your project, including lines of dialogue or ideas for characters or locations or anything else. You then move to your story beats, which is going to be a whole list of all the scenes with the structural headings above the kind of broad sections, like the sequences such as the premise scenes, or the sequences like, the escalation sequence or things like that. But we don't have to have every scene included. You don't have to have everything figured out at that point. We're just trying to get a rough shape of the story. Step 4 is scene cards, where we expand that story beats outline into a full paragraph that not only includes everything that happens in the scene, or the essential action of that scene, but also the pages that it should take place on. So in that way, we're building a really comprehensive roadmap of your story, so that by the time we start, we should be like, I know what happens on page 1. I know the scene that happens on page 2 to 3. I know the scene that happens on page 4. And you can tell exactly how far you have drifted from your original, like, we're trying not to drift too far from your outline. You're trying to execute the script that you have planned out to the best of your ability, but by planning it to this extent, you will have a really clear awareness of how much you have stuck to your original vision versus deviated from it. So it's okay to change some stuff and to come up with new ideas as you work through it. Like, those things are unavoidable, but as best you can, if you're trying to write features professionally in Hollywood, you got to be able to execute on the outlines that you write. Because if you work through weeks of development on a treatment with a producer, and then you write a script that's totally different, they're going to be like, where's the thing that I asked for that we agreed upon? And you're going to be fired. So you got to actually be able to execute the outlines that you make, or at least try your very best. Even if they're not turning out well, or if certain things are not working right, it's better to work all the way through that draft than it is to start over, or to start something new, or to start trying to fix and change the story, when it's in motion already. We're trying to build and preserve the sense of what we call momentum. Momentum meaning your ability to keep working and keep being excited enough to keep coming back day after day after day and keep getting work done. We're trying to write, once we start the actual pages at week 4, you're writing about 4 pages a day. That's not terribly difficult, but it's not terribly easy either. I mean, 4 pages is going to be like 2 or 3 scenes, probably, or maybe 1 super long scene, but it's going to be like a couple scenes a day, most likely. And that's not, some days you'll fall behind, or some days you're too tired, or some days your kids have an emergency, or some days, I don't know, your dog eats your homework, or whatever it is that requires you to take a step back and say, I need to preserve my momentum and go back and do more work tomorrow. Or maybe I need to do an extra page for the next couple days to keep my benchmark, or to meet the benchmark or the milestone in the way that I wanted to. It might require you to sort of shift around your schedule a little bit, or find new ways of managing your time so that you're able to get that consistent writing in every day to make sure you're meeting those goals. I mean, if you're not able to do this now, you got to work to the point where you are able to do it so that you're able to write features in 8 to 12 weeks. I mean, this is just, we're all assuming that you want to write features professionally in the Hollywood system. If this is just like a hobby for you that you just think it would be fun to learn about, you don't have to meet any of our benchmarks. You're not going to get penalized or kicked out of the class if you're like, I'm way behind. Like, that's always fine to be. But this is the basic overview. Let me just pause for any questions on this really quick. Anything we've talked about so far? Let me make sure I'm checking our YouTube comments and things like that too. Looks like no comments from the stream people. The people of the stream. Okay, so let's continue. I'm gonna skip this discussion question for now, I think. So let's just go over some of these basic things. 1, will this draft be good? You're gonna write a draft in 8 weeks. Is it gonna be good? No. That's okay. It's a first draft, and we also just have to move beyond this idea that any individual draft or script or anything needs to be good before you're happy with it or before you finish it. You have to be okay with finishing something that isn't good. That is a tricky thing to do sometimes, and we have to kind of overcome certain mental barriers, and you have to plan for hitting the wall before you even begin. I often say, you have to counter this feeling early on that you're gonna get to the point where you're like, well, I had a bad week, I'm kind of tired, I'm a few milestones behind, and I can't figure out this next scene. I just give up. I'll just try again next time, or I'll put it to the side. You have to expect that some feeling like that will hit you every single time in every script, no matter how it goes. So try not to let that make you abandon the idea. Anticipate that beforehand, and we're playing Mortal Kombat here. Have your counter move ready to go, so when that feeling shows up, you flip it over your shoulder and kick it into a meat grinder because you're ready for it and you planned for it, and you're like, I knew that vampire would attack me, and now I know exactly how to handle it. You got to get through to the end of the script. Obviously, if you can't finish it, you're not in trouble. But really, really, really do try. That's almost the entire point of this boot camp, is teaching you how to just learn your own. It's teaching you your own process for finishing things, I guess I would say. Okie doke. Let's look at. Well, I think we've gone over enough of these questions, or enough of these things. I think I've covered all of this. This is hard work and takes a long time, and nobody starts out good at it. I'm gonna keep skipping a little bit. I'll leave this up just behind me, just so you guys can look at the realities of this behind me. I'm not gonna read it out, but I do just want to say, let's get ready to start typing in your sketchbooks. Let's open up your. Let's make sketchbooks. Let's go to Google Docs right now. You're gonna go to Drive. You're going to click the New button, and you're just gonna make a new document. And at the top, you're just gonna call it the name of your movie and sketchbook. If you don't know what your movie is yet, I'll just call it Movie Sketchbook. And here at the very top, there's a couple things that we're going to write down right away, and there's a bunch more that you can fill in completely freeform as you move through this. Let's see. Where's my sketchbook page? Here it is. So at the top, put these following things. We have title, genre, logline, and comps. Let's go over what each of these things are. Title, we all know what this is. If you don't have a title, that's okay. Put a placeholder in, or just call it Untitled Movie if you really want to. We have genre, and in terms of genre, there's a limited list. We shouldn't be making up new genres because nobody's going to know what you're talking about. So there is kind of a comprehensive list here, and we want to only pick 2 things at the most to mash together. If you're mashing together more than 3 things or more, no one's going to understand what it is anymore. So you have to narrow this down. Like, we could look at something like Star Wars as sci-fi, fantasy, action, adventure, Western with elements of romance, right? I mean, like, you could say it's all those things, but really, if we boil it down a lot, Star Wars is sort of just samurai meets World War II in space, right? So it's a sci-fi action movie. So you have to be a little bit reductive sometimes, depending on what your idea is. We shouldn't usually be writing, especially for a boot camp, and especially if you're new at this, generally should not be writing ideas that are way too ambitious and would require the mashup of 9 different genres to make sense. So just leave this at 2. If you include too many flavors, it starts to feel like a soup of indiscernible nothing flavor. So you got to just kind of stick this to like sci-fi, horror, action, comedy, romance, musical, whatever it is. Just pick 2 at the most. Next, we have your logline. You may have some early version of that, or you may have nothing for that yet. That's okay. That's the 1-sentence expression of what your movie's about. Don't worry about it if you don't have it. And last, we have comps. Comp stands for comparables, or comparable titles to yours. So you're picking 2 other movies, or at least one. If it's a movie, at least one of them should be a movie. The other one can be something else, like a TV show or a video game, or I guess you could do a play or something like that. But most plays that you would comp have been adapted into movies, so I wouldn't think too much about that. In any case, your comps, you want to narrow it down. You can list out a bunch of potential comps. Generally, you want to limit this to 2 for, eventually as well. But if you have like a bunch of ideas for movies that would be sort of like yours, for instance, we might think in terms of the tone of one of these and the world of another one of these, or the world of the first thing and the style and the approach of the second thing. I mean, if we say something like your movie is going to be like Mean Girls meets the Maltese Falcon, well, then that sort of sounds like, okay, it's a noir set in a high school, like Brick, or like what is it called? Assassination of a High School President, or something like that. So think of world of the first thing, but style or approach of the second thing. That's not actually the formula for it, and there's not really an exact science to comps, but just try to pick 2 that really paint the correct picture of what you're doing. So if you're doing a historical straight adventure movie, we probably don't want to pick Lord of the Rings, even though we are doing sword fighting and we're doing big battles and things like that. But if we say Lord of the Rings, it's going to start to build the wrong idea in people's minds. So try to pick your comps carefully. But it's, at this stage, you can list out a bunch of potential comps for your idea. And you can begin filling out the sketchbook right now, like as early as right now. So everyone, if you're planning on writing a movie for the course, open a sketchbook and list these things at the top, whatever you have. And throughout the rest of the class, you should keep the sketchbook open and be writing down ideas as they come to you, writing down questions that you're having or things that you want to keep track of for later, or reminders to yourself, or links to videos or pictures or research materials or anything that will just inform the thing that you are working on. Any questions on sketchbook creation? Jamie asks, do I need to use Google Docs? No, you don't need to use Google Docs, but if you want to share documents on the server, then it should be either a PDF or a Google Docs link, just because anything else is going to not always work, like Word documents, for instance, not everyone can open. So I highly recommend Google Docs, but you can use whatever you want. All right, so let's move forward. Pollack says, I don't have a logline yet. That's okay. Matt says, can the title just be a working one if it's bad? Yes, of course. All of these things are still in progress and working. These don't have to be set in stone. We might be adjusting our comps or our logline up to the very end. Alrighty. Alrighty, we'll move forward unless anyone else has a question they want to chime in with. We're starting with logline stuff. So we want to, if you have some early version of the logline, start typing that out now so you have something that's ready to copy and paste into the chat in a little bit, because in about 10-15 minutes we're going to start posting early versions of your loglines, or maybe if you can't even put it into typed out words and you just want to explain about your idea and maybe we can start to shape it into a logline, that's okay too. So we're going to start sharing ideas in about 15 minutes of class. So if you have some concept of what you want to work on, start writing down like a sentence or two that explains what the movie is. If you already know what loglines are or how they work, then you can start writing a proper one. If you don't know, that's okay. Just write down whatever you have in your sketchbook and be ready to copy and paste it into our chat pretty soon. Not right now, but I'll let you know. Question from Pollock. Can you put who the main character is? I think you mean in the sketchbook? Yeah, the info about the main character would definitely go in the sketchbook too. Okay, so shall we do loglines? What's a logline? Your story's central conflict distilled down to just one single sentence. There's the occasional logline you'll see that's 2 sentences, but almost every one that I've seen that has been 2 sentences, my first thought has been, well, that could have been 1 sentence. So try to make it 1 sentence. We're going to answer this question, what is the movie about? So we want to do a couple things with this logline. One, we need to know who's the main character and what are they trying to do is basically what we're expressing here. What are they up against? What is in their way? That's like our Act 2 obstacles and things like that. What happens if they fail? A sense of stakes and ticking clock. So there's like a million jobs you have to do with the logline, but at the most basic, we're answering who's this about and what are they trying to do. And we should answer this question of what are we going to be watching this person do. A lot of the time I'll see people fail on a logline with an idea, or I shouldn't say fail, but I will see a not as strong logline that's framed all around somebody has to make a choice between this and this. A character has this character has to decide, do I want to go back home or do I want to stay in the big city? And it's like, so you're going to make the audience, or you're going to make your reader think the whole movie is about a guy sitting in a room thinking about whether or not I should go to the city or go back home. No, we're not. Like, the entire movie isn't us watching a guy make a choice. The logline is expressing what we're spending the movie watching people do. So, and a lot of the time in stories like this, in filmic Hollywood style storytelling, then that choice is externalized in some kind of action, right? So it's going to be something like that choice is the subtext of the journey that this character is on. It might be like, when she moves back to her hometown from the big city, we could do classic Hallmark rom-com kind of thing. She's got the guy that likes her from the big city that sort of represents all the hustle and bustle of the industry, and then we've got the nice guy from her hometown who was her childhood best friend, and like that's how we're kind of externalizing this question of she has to decide whether or not she's going to stay or whether or not she's going to go. She has some conflict that's going to force her to ultimately have to make that choice and decide which of the suitors she's going to be with or whatever. But it's not just a movie about a person sitting in a room thinking about stuff. That's what we want to avoid, is this sense of it's just about someone thinking, or it's like a primarily internal story about people talking about stuff or discussing stuff or coming to terms with stuff, which is a phrase we never want to use in a logline, because coming to terms with can mean almost anything, and it doesn't have any kind of clear external tangible goalposts. Coming to terms with something like, imagine we have a character's let's say a character's grandfather dies, and she's trying to come to terms with that loss. Okay, but in a movie, what are we watching a person do would be the question. So maybe it's like, I need to take his ashes to the top of Mount Everest, like he always wanted. He was a devoted mountain climber his entire life, and so this is a movie about a lady climbing a mountain. Okay, now I get it. Now I see what the movie's about. And the subtext is she's trying to come to grips with this grief and this loss. That's like the internal stuff that we're trying to mostly imply in a logline. We have to do 2 things here. We're balancing between explaining what the movie is and like what we're watching people actually do before our very eyes, and then we're suggesting what that internal journey is as well. And a movie like a woman must take her grandfather's ashes to the top of Mount Everest to fulfill his dying wish. We do have a sense of both of those things. As simple as that story sounds, we have the sense of the physical obstacles and what the mental internal journey that the character is making is going to be. So there's a tricky balance you have to make, or you have to perform in writing a logline. There's a lot of different jobs it has to fulfill, but at the most basic, you might just use this pretty simple template in order to just get started. Try this and just write this down if you don't know what else to use. And you don't always have to use this, but these are the questions that we want to have answered by the time we're finished reading that logline. And this, by the way, it's not just movies that have loglines. TV shows have loglines. Books have loglines. Every story can have a logline. So, and you don't need a logline for a short story or a short film or something like that. I mean, they're for marketing purposes in terms of we're trying to use this to persuade somebody to read your script. I mean, a better written logline is more likely to be read by people, and it builds that confidence early on that you know what you're doing and that this is going to be an experience worth reading. And for writing purposes, that logline is going to help act as that lighthouse or as that North Star that's going to help you stay on track during the construction of the story and making sure that every scene goes on to take full advantage of the premise that you've chosen, and that it's going to give you a head start on outlining because you're going to know where certain things are going to fall in the script just from having a really well-worded logline from the beginning. So that's what it's for, and we might use this template if you aren't sure where else to start. Here's how it goes. When or after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes. What's the inciting incident? That's the event that kicks off the story. And that is going to be that first domino that tips over into all the others, and it's usually not the very first scene. And we might see the catalyst of something like Star Wars A New Hope is going to be when his parents are killed by the wicked forces of an evil empire, a young farm boy must team up with a smuggler, a princess, and his old wise mentor to destroy an Imperial superweapon, something like that, right? So we can see that the inciting incident of Star Wars is not the very first thing we see. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes in modern storytelling. I know Star Wars is a movie from the 70s, so it takes quite a while for us actually to get to these inciting incidents. But in modern storytelling conventions, movies that are written and made now, we expect that inciting incident to fall around minute 10 to 15 of most stories. If it's taking longer than page 20 to get to your inciting incident, you've taken too long. That's just there's not that many flat rules we can say, but a modern reader will simply say you've taken too long to get the story going. And the most common note that you will get as a newer writer is the story takes too long to get going. So just keep that in mind, and like I mentioned, you have your Mortal Kombat counter attack ready to go, so that if you're preparing for that note and you can preempt that note with, obviously we don't want to overcompensate and have it start at 1,000 miles an hour, but you at least know that a first act is important, and a first act that leads naturally and organically up to that catalyst is really key for investing the audience in this journey. So that's just a little bit about inciting incidents. We're just wondering what kicks the story off. An adjective protagonist. That is going to be what we're establishing in those first 10 minutes, that we're learning that trait about them. And usually then to that end, or by that same token, we want to be choosing this adjective carefully and using one that expresses who your main character is in such a way that we understand why the story is about them. So it might be picking some interesting limitation that your character faces. When a wheelchair-bound man needs to climb to the top of a volcano, it's going to present certain challenges that are inherent to that character. Or when, I don't know, we might have a guy who's terrified of the ocean needs to make a voyage in a boat. That's going to be really clear why that guy needs to be the one to go on that journey, because it's going to be the process of him not only getting across the ocean, but also conquering his fear of the ocean in the first place. So that's why we want to choose that adjective carefully. And you can describe a person in a lot of different ways. I mean, especially because protagonist is just going to be a single noun, right? So your character might be a grieving mother, but she might also be a hyper-competent assassin. She might be both of those things. But depending on the story that you're telling, you might choose one over the other because it highlights why this is the story about that person, or why they are uniquely suited to be challenged by this story, or why there's some irony, and that sense of irony is really important in high concept feature writing. But we want to know why this guy or this lady. They must conflict. That's going to be your second act, basically. That's suggesting to us, once we move from page 20 to 25-ish into that what is really the meat of the movie, we say the second act is the movie. So we want to have a sense of what your characters are going to be doing during that part. And so you might imagine what you would see on the poster, for instance. And on the poster, if there's guys with guns and there's an explosion in the background, and there's a bunch of dead aliens in the ground all around them, then we might imagine, okay, this is an action sci-fi movie about people fighting aliens, and that's what your second act should then deliver on, or else you've miscalibrated something. So that's what, when we're saying conflict, we're asking basically, what's the second act? What are we watching people do in the second act? And it should feel visual and exciting and interesting and all of these things. But moreover, we should just understand what we're watching. Like, we shouldn't be left in the dark as to what your characters actually have to do. Don't hold too much back in the logline. Don't be worried, oh, I'm going to ruin the best part if you explain to us what we're doing in the second act. Because if you don't tell us enough, nobody will read the story. Before the stakes or the ticking clock? What are the stakes? Somebody define the term dramatic or narrative stakes for us.
Why these characters need, like, what's going to happen if they don't succeed?
Yeah.
Like how high or
That's
how
a good way.
how in nature are they?
Sure. Good way of putting it. What will happen if they don't succeed? So we are looking generally in feature film for high stakes stories. It's not to say that every story has high stakes, and there's whole genres like things like mumblecore, slice of life, things like that in fact should not really have as high stakes. For the purposes of this class, we will typically be angling you towards higher concept ideas with higher stakes, and usually the stakes feel too low is a significant problem that readers will identify in a story. Almost never do the stakes feel too high. So it's tough to write a movie where the stakes feel too high. Unless it's like a guy's like, I need to get a candy bar from the vending machine down the hall or else I will die of heart failure. In which case, I don't know, maybe you have set the stakes too high for what is happening in that story, but I don't know, maybe there's a way that could work. Rarely is the stakes are too high a problem. Pollock says the world ending is too high. Yeah, for a lot of stories, the world might end as too high stakes. Ticking clock, that's going to be a device that you're going to use to put pressure on your characters throughout the whole story. And it might be as simple as there's a bomb that's going to go off, or it might be, sorry, that was not simple at all. It might be as simple as mom and dad are going to come home from their trip early, so now we have to clean up the party before they get back home. Or it might be, there is an actual ticking clock on the bomb, or a series of bombs that are going to explode all over the city. So it's part of the stakes, and the ticking clock usually is an essential aspect of those stakes, and it's what adds that sense of urgency to the story. Features are stories with a high sense of urgency, and also they are ones that could only happen one specific way and in one exact fashion. So it's not a series of episodic situations. It's not like a setup of a series of episodic situations. That's what separates a movie and TV idea. A movie could only happen one time in one way, and it's going to be, for the most part, the most important events in your main character's life thus far. There are exceptions to that. There are strange exceptions to that here and there, where it's not the most important events of their life thus far. But usually it's going to be. I always mention this weird example of the Die Hard movies as being one of those weird series where they kind of break this rule, and it breaks the entire reality of the situation if we think about it too hard. Because, John McClane was, we thought, kind of a normal NYPD cop up until the first movie happens, in which he's thrust into an extraordinary situation, and he takes out 8 bad guys and saves the day. And then in every sequel, he does that again, but with bigger and bigger stakes, to the extent where in the later ones, he's not even looking for those situations. They just sort of seem to happen around him. And it starts to feel less like the first movie was a fluke and was the most important events of his life. And it was more like, no, he's just cursed. John McClane is just cursed to have terrorist activity happen around him. And actually, that's kind of a hilarious idea for a story if anybody wants to write about a hero or a cop that is cursed to have crime happen near him all the time. That'd be really funny, so go ahead and do that if you want. But I just want to say, most of the time we understand this story to be the most significant, important events in your character's life so far. If they aren't, then you either haven't chosen the right events, or you haven't chosen the right character. Does that make sense? So it could be that you haven't picked a person that this events, or that the accomplishment of the events are important enough to. You may not have picked somebody that is relevant enough to the situation, or somebody that has enough investment in the situation, that they need to be the ones that go on the story, or go on the journey of the story. Okay, I want to take questions on logline stuff, and you guys should be, I hope everyone has their sketchbook open and they're fiddling and typing away at their initial ideas of what their logline could be like, or some early bad version of it. It's okay if it's bad. It doesn't have to be perfect on the first try. But let me just open the floor to questions on what we've talked about so far about loglines and stakes for stories. Everyone understands how to do this and what a logline looks like and how to write theirs? Oh, I see thumbs up emojis. That means yes. Cool. Great. So I would start on that. Write an early version of your logline. I'm going to do a couple more slides, so just ignore my voice, or don't turn the volume too far down, but you can turn it down a little bit if you need to. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about loglines, and then we're going to share these early versions of what we have, and I'm going to give folks live feedback in the class. So get ready to copy and paste these into our chat. Okay, let me talk a little bit more about loglines first while you guys are working on yours. You don't always have to include all these things, but these are the questions we're going to be wondering. We want to know what gets the story going. We want to know who is this about and really why it's about them. What are we watching them do? And why is it important? Why is it urgent? So the sense of motivation, stakes, and urgency are so key for establishing in the logline. Maybe we should look at some loglines, actually. Do I have just a slide of a bunch of them? I have mine.
You have yours, yep.
Okay, maybe. We have
good.
A macro in the chat, don't we? I
Not
think
for examples. What we
Oh, do we
there
not?
is like that PDF has like a ton of them. The link in the little guide thing.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so check in the chat. Scroll up a little bit if you want to see just a bunch of examples of pro loglines. I'll just keep mine up here on the wall for a second. Some of these are not, like, one of these is not even written by me. It's written by, it's guided by a previous management of mine. So some of these are not going to follow each of those steps that I've been explaining, and some of these won't follow the template exactly. But I want to just kind of point out a couple things and like show you how you can answer some of these questions without spelling out all of, when inciting incident and adjective protagonist must conflict or before stakes. Let's look at the first one here. This is my script that I broke into the industry with in 2017. It's placed in top 10 of the Launchpad feature contest. Nickel quarterfinals. I took meetings all over town based on this script and ultimately ended up getting signed off of it, and people still bring the script up to me to this very day. We have Peter and the Wolves. A sensitive boy in Nazi-besieged Leningrad must hunt down the cannibal that ate his friend. After enough time, I whittled this down to just this, even though what we're doing is kind of implying the stakes. We're not explicitly saying, or if he doesn't succeed, the cannibal will eat him too. But I figured that just sort of, we're having to hunt this person down, and it's a cannibal in the first place. We would sort of understand that they would be dangerous and deadly to hunt this person down, right? So we get why this is life and death. We get why this is a horror thriller and why our main character's life is in danger. We get what he's up against. We get what he's actually doing. The fact that he's a sensitive boy that has to do a really violent, horrible thing tells us why it's about this person, and also what this internal journey of the character is going to be, where he's going to have to come to terms. I always say avoid this, but this is what I mean. Like, you can imply that your character has to come to terms with whatever. Your character has to understand his new place in the world. He has to come to, go through this internal journey and realize, am I a killer or am I not a killer, basically. Okay, so that's the first one. We have a few more. I'm not going to read every one of these. But I will say, if you're struggling to find something to frame your logline around, look for that central relationship. So let's look down at the knowledge here. Struggling with the Herculean test to become a London cabbie. A brash young delivery driver partners with a cantankerous older coachman who draws him into a deadly scheme. I think I may have changed that to deadly heist by now. I can't remember. I wrote this like 2 years ago. But in any case, you see how that partnership and that team up is highlighted right there in the logline, because sometimes if you don't have a clear hook for your story, a central relationship is the hook you're looking for, especially in drama. So if you're like, I don't know, a guy is trying to escape from prison, or he's trying to start a business or something like that, by itself that doesn't really imply the whole trajectory of a story. But the second you put him with, he has to escape from prison with the help of his estranged father. Not only does it suggest lots of different interesting fun and games in our premise scenes, in the second act, in the essential action of our movie, it also tells us it suggests for us what that trajectory of that relationship is going to be, and what the crux of that internal saga that your main character goes on is going to pertain to, or how are they going to be changing internally, as opposed to just what are they dealing with on the outside. Usually with a buddy team-up story like this, it's going to be the process of them overcoming their differences and coming together and teaming up in order to, by the end of the story, they will be best friends or they will be lovers, depending on the relationship arc that we're doing. Okay, so any other questions on we have a question from Matt. Can we do 2 or 3 log lines? Yeah, you can list up to 2 or 3 log lines today, and we'll try to give you feedback on which one to go with. Other questions? All right, if there's no other questions, we will continue. And let's say I'll do one more slide and then we'll post and share loglines. Let me just see if there's one more thing I wanted to cover. High concept and execution dependent. Maybe I should cover that. Yeah, let's go over that really quick, and hopefully you're still typing away. We're still getting ready to copy and paste this text into our chat to share what you have, whatever it is, no matter if it's whatever stage it's at, if it's any good or not, doesn't matter. What does high concept mean? It does not mean the story is more complicated, which a lot of people seem to think that, like, oh, Christopher Nolan movies are high concept because they pertain to concepts of time and death and these really high-minded kind of ideas, when in fact it has nothing to do with that. High concept does not mean more complicated or pertain to the budget or subject matter or genre at all. You can have a high concept story of any genre, of any budget, and that's about anything. What it means is a high reliance on the concept to sell the idea. It's an engaging and self-contained premise with broad appeal, like ideally the broadest possible appeal, that when you hear it, it blooms in the mind to suggest a conflict and structure and the setup for the whole movie. So these 4 examples here are just some of my 4 favorites. Let's just look at Shanghai Noon as one of our best examples and one of the best movies ever made, if I may say so myself. I just love it. But the things that make it work are crystal clear, I think. I mean, we have Kung Fu Guy in the Old West is the kind of this meets that element of this. And that sort of like this meets that is so key to high concept in the first place. We have a character or situation we understand with a new element that is introduced to it. So it's a combination of the familiar and the strange. Kung Fu Guy, we understand that movie, and we understand Western. And now we're going to combine those together and say Kung Fu Guy in the Old West is the high concept, sort of very broad, high-level pitch of that movie. Shanghai Noon. It's like High Noon, but meets Shanghai. We get it, right? A Kung Fu Guy teams up with a cowboy. We have something like Yesterday is another really good high-concept logline because it's sort of one of these situations that has, in some way, occurred to everybody, even if we don't realize always that it has. But it's like, this is a story about a struggling musician who has a crazy car accident one day, and when he wakes up, for some reason, inexplicably, he's in a world where the Beatles have never existed. And so now he's going to become famous by recreating their entire discography and claiming credit for it himself. So we see all kinds of dramatic, interesting stuff in there. We see the fun, just the basic wish fulfillment of what if I could come up with, or what if I could be the one that came up with all these amazing things that exist already? And what if I could be the one that, I use that to my advantage to get rich and famous? It's a rags to riches story. It's we have it's kind of like a genie out of the bottle wish movie, as we call it. Liar Liar is a similar thing, but it's actually a bad wish that he gets, not a good wish. But it's still out of the bottle wish. It's like, what is the magic situation that this character specifically needs to go through to make them into the sort of perfect version of themselves? And in this case, Liar Liar is about a lawyer played by Jim Carrey who is a chronic liar. He lies all the time to everybody, including his own family, his own kid. He's always saying, I'll be there for your birthday, and he's never there for the soccer games and stuff. And then the kid makes a birthday wish that his dad won't be able to lie for one single day. That's the sort of basic premise of this movie, and we see exactly why that person has to go through it. We see a lawyer has to go a day without, or a chronic liar has to go a day without lying just we can imagine all kinds of fun and games in the second act that come from that. This is all at the basis of what makes high concept work is this blooming in the mind. We say that like you just tell people the title and the basic setup, and we already start to kind of see what the movie is. We can already kind of start to imagine it. Recently we saw, I didn't see the movie yet, I heard it's a fun time, Violent Night. Did anybody see Violent Night?
Awesome. So good.
You liked it?
Yeah.
What's the high concept pitch
Yeah.
for that one? What's that about?
Santa fights people.
Santa killing
Pretty
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
No, it was awesome.
it's Santa meets it's Die Hard with Santa, isn't it? Isn't that kind of just the basics of it? It's like the title tells us that too. The title is like the bow on top that and the bow has a tag on it that clarifies what is the high concept pitch for the story. Violent Night. Oh, it's like Silent Night but with violence. It's Santa meets action. That's the entire basis of the high concept pitch. So if your movie is not high concept, that's okay. Not every movie has to be high concept. You'll run into certain challenges that result from that. And if you want to write movies in Hollywood professionally that you aren't going to be directing yourself, then you should try to learn principles of how high concept ideas work. But if you're a director and you want to direct your own movies, maybe you want to look a little bit more at execution dependent loglines. It's not a spectrum of high concept to low concept. I guess some people say low concept, but like usually we say it's a spectrum of high concept to execution dependent, where like this would only be good if you executed it well. That's what we mean by execution dependent. And some really fantastic movies, we have 4 right here that are all very execution dependent ideas. Some of them that might rely on complex character study or cinematography or other just kind of difficult to explain strengths that would relate more to the artistic execution of a production. I think something like Whiplash, for instance, is like, it doesn't have a high concept pitch for it. It's a brilliant, really simple, easy story, and so satisfying to watch. But if you try to pitch it to somebody, you struggle because you're like, it's about a very dedicated jazz drummer who has a tough coach that he's trying to impress. That's really it. There's not anything else more high concept than that. I mean, there's no real sense of strong irony to the premise. It's a great movie and a great idea, but it is very execution dependent, and then it was executed very well. Anything with this kind of essential but very difficult to convey conceit or world or sense of style can be very execution dependent too. Something like John Wick, where it's kind of just like a template for assassin revenge movie. When bad guys murder someone the main character cares about, he gets his guns back out and he murders all of them. That's like the template for this movie. We see it in everything from your Unforgiven to your Death Wish to all of this, right? Like, but the things that make John Wick really stand out, what make people really love it, are what? The cinematography, the fights, Keanu. And we can't write this movie will star Keanu. We can't write this movie will have amazing choreography. We can't write this will look like a cool neon 80s video game. Though you can certainly suffuse the script with that sense of style and cinematography, but like it's not really part of what makes a high concept pitch work. So try to be angling more towards high concept if you aren't sure. Like, I wouldn't lean on this, oh, I guess it's just execution dependent thing if you can't come up with, or if you can't like fix your logline. I wouldn't just lean on it's execution dependent if there's a way it could be high concept. Like, this is just one of those essential skills for being a professional screenwriter that you should try your best to just get better at. But if at the end of the day you're like, I'm writing something like Pulp Fiction, it's 9 different intersecting stories that all have their own protagonists and motivations, and it's very complicated, ultimately you can write what you want. I'm not going to stop you from writing one thing over the other. So good luck is all I will say. Look out for sci-fi or fantasy type stakes or goals too, especially if the logline includes like, they have to save the whole Illyrian crystal neo subsector. It's like, well, we don't know what that is or what any of those words meant, so we're sort of just lost. Or if it sounds so generic, like a princess must destroy an obelisk to defeat an evil lord and save her kingdom. It's like, okay, that kind of just sounds like a template for a million different movies, and it's going to read as more execution dependent in the premise. Okay, last questions before we share loglines or ideas? Great. Okay, let's post loglines or half-formed sort of proto-loglines in the chats. And I'll start drawing them up to give comments on, and you should be ready to read it out loud and answer questions about it. Make sure to include the title and genre if you can. Thank you, Matt, Pollock, and Dan. You can edit your post to include the title and genre by clicking the More button in the top right of that Discord comment and click Edit. Or it's like a pencil icon, I think, actually. So I'll start with the ones that have title and genre, and others can add those in as needed. All right, so keep posting those. We have a few in the chat now, so I'm just going to draw one of them out, and I'll put it up and ask the writer to read it out loud, and we will then give some feedback. Let's start with Dan.
Hello.
Hi, Dan. You want to read this out for us?
Sure. Dismissed possession. Genre, horror. Possession, comedy. Comps, Exorcist, Ghostbusters, pick any Jim Carrey movie, comedy. When a supposedly vile spirit accidentally possesses a vapid, shallow woman by accident and gets stuck within her, the two must work together to rekindle her relationship with an exorcist she knew and bullied in high school.
All right, thanks for that. So first thing, possession's not a genre. That's kind of just like a sub-area of horror, so just horror comedy is fine. Exorcist, Ghostbusters, Jim Carrey comedies. I like that. Let me read it again and make sure I understand. When a supposedly vile spirit, so he's not actually bad, accidentally possesses a vapid, shallow woman by accident and gets stuck within her. Okay, I'm with you so far. The two must work together to rekindle her relationship with an exorcist that she knew and bullied in high school. Okay, and in order to get him to fix the ghost problem?
Yeah, because it's like, oh, you were a mean girl. She was in like one of those vapid mean girls type characters, and she's the exorcist is like, you were a bitch to me. I ain't gonna help you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so this, I'm into this. I think I see this working pretty well, and maybe one of your comps could be like Casper. This almost sounds like it has kind of a Casper vibe to it. But my question is there a reason she can't go to another exorcist? Like, why does it have to be this one?
I hadn't really thought of it. I just thought this would be hilarious.
It's a good idea, and I like that concept.
Mainly because how common are exorcists out there?
You're right.
You know, just like go to the store.
But so, like, for instance, I might ask, is he like one of the best ones? Is he famous? Is he like really well known for doing this? Is he like does she have a limited time? Like, where's the pressure coming from?
Yeah, there's the idea that there is a limited time since the possession could become more. Both characters have stakes in this. If the ghost doesn't get out, she'll be bound to the lady permanently. And if the lady doesn't get the ghost out, it will start to transform her, and she'll just look tacky and ugly. And she can't have that because she's so got to be beautiful.
Okay. So, we're missing that sense of urgency. So you said there's a chance that if she doesn't do this...
It's hard to fit all that into the log line, you know?
I understand. It's hard to... Yeah, log lines are tough to write. But we do have a ticking clock here that you should emphasize, because otherwise there's no urgency in the story. It's like... except for, the fact they don't like each other, right? But my assumption would be that over the course of the story, they become friends, right?
How about if I add before their bond becomes permanent?
Sure. Yeah, I think that would really help. So in that case, and also just try to, I guess that might actually kind of explain why this is the exorcist that they have to go to, right? Because she doesn't have time to go searching the yellow pages for a different one. Like, this is the one that she knows. I think that would kind of answer that question.
Yeah.
And last thing, you say he's supposedly vile. But supposed by who? Like, and what is he actually like if he's not vile? I think you'd probably be better off saying, what is he actually like?
Well, the ghost is acting like... the idea is that the ghost character is actually putting on a facade of being this mean individual, but she's actually just lashing out at the world because she felt cheated in after death, in life and after life. Okay. It'll be explained in the story.
Sure. Okay, but so for the purposes of the log line, you're going to want to then say, what is the character trait of hers that is making her act that way, right? So if you say something like when a grumpy spirit or whatever it is, pick a word. I don't know what word you use, but why is she acting like that? We wouldn't. I think we're struggling, to understand what supposedly vile means in this context. So pick what she actually is, or he or she. I don't know if it was male or female ghost, but describe them in terms of who they actually are, and then that's going to tell us kind of how that character is going to change over the course of the story. I mean, I'm guessing you've picked two kind of unlikable people that are forced together that are going to end up having to see what the other one offers and contributes, and ultimately we're going to go on that kind of buddy relationship arc in this story. Am I right?
Pretty much.
Okay, then yeah, tell us in terms of what is going to make her or what is going to make the ghost clash with the person that she's with, he or she is with. Maybe look at the opposite traits that the foil character has, and maybe you can bring those to the forefront somehow. But in any case, just describe your character, pick your adjective for your main character so that we know who is going on this journey and why is it them.
All right.
Questions?
I'm not sure how to word it. That's what I'm thinking about now.
That's okay. Take your time. Okay, you can check back if there's something.
Yeah. Move on. Don't stay on me for this.
Sure. No problem. Just bring out that ticking clock, that sense of urgency. A little better description of our main character, and you'll be in good shape. I like this idea. I can really see this. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so let's pick a new one. I think we got a couple from Matt. We got two from Matt. We got one from Pollock. We got one from Jotul. We'll start with Matt. So we'll look at both of them, and we'll maybe just try to pick your favorite between them, and then we'll give feedback on that one. Does that sound good?
Well, my favorite one is too.
Your favorite one's the second one? Okay, should we just look at that then?
The first one. The first one. The sci-fi horror. Yeah, the one you have up right now. Yeah.
Okay, Evil Phone. Sounds good. Can you read this for us, please?
Yeah, it's a working title.
That's okay.
Yeah. When a phone literally takes over her daughter's mind, an overprotective mother must try her best to save her before she is completely taken over by the phone. Okay. Yeah.
When a phone literally takes over her daughter's mind, that's brilliant. And I'm into that. I'm totally with you. An overprotective mother must try her best to save her before she's taken over. Okay, so the first half you had me. You've lost me in the second half a little bit. I mean, overprotective mother, I'm with you. But must try her best to save her. We know that, but what does she have to do to save her, right? Does she have to kill 3 virgins and bathe in their blood? Does she have to, go on a quest? Does she have to do something by a certain time? Do you see what I mean, where we're just looking for kind of, specificity of action?
Trying to figure out what's actually going on, why the phone's, taking over the mind.
Right, we know that. So your character's trying to defeat this antagonistic evil phone, but what does she have to do that? What's her goal? We're looking for a tangible goalpost. You don't have to have an answer. It's okay if you're not sure, but try to...
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's okay. Try to, as you continue to work on this week, you want to tell us what we're actually going to be watching our main character do in the movie. So it might be, like I just mentioned, complete 3 sacrifices before the full moon. You see what I mean? It doesn't have to be that, but it has to be that specific. So tell us what she has to do to actually defeat the phone. And then we say before she's completely taken over. By that you mean the possession, like in the last script, the possession becomes permanent after a certain time frame. Is that right? Oh, I think we lost you. Are you still there?
The phone just takes over the mind completely.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Okay.
Okay, yeah, cool.
So I understand.
So,
there's a ticking clock where if they don't do this, if she doesn't stop the phone in time, then it will become permanent. I'm with you. The last thing is that your comps are really kind of sounding a little more jarring than this, or kind of jarring me out of this premise, because this sounds like a comedy to me. Are you saying this is you listed Hereditary as one of your comps? Is that really the tone you're going for a movie about an evil phone?
Or yeah. Yeah.
It just doesn't
I was
sound
going full
scary.
horror.
It
I
just
think
doesn't.
it works.
I guess it just doesn't sound scary. It sounds funny is the problem. So, can you make it sound scarier in the logline somehow? Like, why is it bad that you got your brain taken over by a phone? What's it going to even do? Make you say tweets out loud all day? Like, what is it? I'm having trouble imagining how it could be scary, I guess is the problem. And it could be that in your logline you can bring out and clarify how it could be actually really scary, because you understand it's kind of a ridiculous idea, right? So, and you listed Stephen King stories. Lots of Stephen King stories have kind of ridiculous ideas too. So it's not like we did a movie about an evil car, didn't we? Christine is an evil haunted car, but it runs people over. I get how a car could be scary. Now, a phone taking over someone's brain, I don't really know what a phone wants. Does a phone have sinister motivations? I guess this one does. But what is it actually going to be doing? Why is it dangerous?
I've had I've been toying with an idea where like the dead dad is the phone, basically possessing the daughter's mind, and he's trying to take the daughter for himself in a way, and kind of like rebelling against the mom. I've been toying with that idea.
That's kind of cool. Yeah, that sounds like a
Or an evil,
different take
or
on
like
this. Go ahead.
Yeah, or like I've also toyed with like an evil AI who it's cliche, but they want to take over the world and control everybody's mind. That's
Sure.
cliche though.
A little bit, but it could still be good. It still sounds a little funny to me. Still, we're still talking about like a cell phone, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about like an evil iPhone. Is that right?
Yeah, like
Okay.
if iPhone would take over your mind and make you evil.
Okay. But what is it gonna do? Like,
Yeah.
make me go around advertising Apple products, or is it like it's not that this movie can't work. It's just that from reading the logline, I'm like, that sounds like a comedy because I can't see how that's scary. So that may mean that there's a problem with the idea itself, or it may mean that you just haven't expressed what's so scary about it in this narrative, right? So I would look at that. Try to, especially if you're picking comps like this, then that's a commitment that your story is going to be very scary, and it's going to be setting that expectation and that promise as of even opening the first page up. So I would look at that. Look at to sum up everything I talked about: tangible goalposts, like what do we actually have to do to defeat the phone? What's going to happen if it what's the time, or is there some kind of ticking clock or time frame? If you don't complete it in this time, is she going to die? Is it going to take over the world? Like, what are the actual stakes? So just kind of bring up those stakes a little bit more to the forefront. And last, bring out the scariness, because if it sounds like a comedy but you're insisting it's a horror, we're just going to be confused.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah. I was just like basically I'm trying to make it like cautionary tale. Like in the future this could happen. Like we could be taken over by our phones. That's like what I'm trying to say, basically with this movie.
Sure, that's true. I see the kind of metaphor in the premise. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
I guess just did all the feedback make sense? Did you have any questions from me about?
Oh no,
how to
yeah,
read the
absolutely,
logline?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Thank you for this. Hope that helps. All right, let's do another one. Pollock, let's do the center, or journey to the center, I guess. Are you here, Pollock?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you read this out for us, please?
A young delinquent girl is sent to a mysterious camp at the center of the earth and must survive the many perils within in order to go home.
All right, that's pretty cool. Camp at the center of the earth. I'm interested. It's not really a journey to the center of anything. Then, in that case, it's kind of a journey out of the center, right?
Yeah, it's journey out of the center, basically. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Because we know there is in fact a book. I think it's by Jules Verne called Journey to the Center of the Earth, which has had many movie adaptations over the years. This is kind of the opposite in a way. That's kind of a cool hook. A young delinquent girl, I love this, is sent to a mysterious camp at the center of the earth. I'm with you, and I'm intrigued. I have questions. She must survive the many perils within it in order to go home. So, I guess my question is, who is the antagonist of this? Who's running this camp?
Oh, I didn't actually think that far ahead.
That's okay. You don't have to know for sure right now, but we're kind of wondering, like, what is your main character going up against? Like in real life, there's no creatures at the center of the earth, right? So in a story, it could be anything. It might be dinosaurs she's up against, or it might be Nazis, like there's versions of pulp stories in which the Nazis have colonized the hollow earth and are taming dinosaurs and things like that. You can make up whatever you want, but we're going to want just maybe, if you just say it's like there's many dangers and many perils that she must encounter, it's not being as specific and concrete as we can be. And you're going to be better off here probably choosing a central relationship to focus on, or an antagonist that is very clear. And rather than her just being sent to this camp, it's like she's captured by this person, this evil pirate or whatever, that she now needs to escape from the clutches of. So bringing out another character into this, I think, will be really key to making this work.
Oh, okay.
Adventure comedy,
Thanks.
I'm totally with you. I like the idea, and I've never seen a camp in the middle of the earth, but it does raise a lot of questions for me. I'm like, well, whose camp is it? What kind of camp? Like a summer camp or like a juvenile? I think you're saying it's like a delinquent camp in a way, but then I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's a delinquent camp.
Okay, so has she done something that's so bad that has earned her a sentence in a camp at the center of the earth? Is that why she's there? Or I guess why specifically her, I guess would be my other question, right? Like and the antagonist could answer that question. If you clarify the antagonist, it could answer why it's this character that has been targeted for this, or why this character is the one going through this. But I guess also look for the answer to that question. Why does this hero have to be the one to go through this journey? And it may be that you need to tailor the obstacles to your main character, or you tailor the character to the obstacles. You can do either way, but it should be just, look for, try to make it clear to us why this character is the right one to be escaping from the center of the earth, I guess.
Okay.
Central relationship will really help.
All right.
Questions?
Yeah, I'm still deciding what type of villain it should be. I'm trying not to make it just like every other Center of the Earth movie.
Well, I don't think it will be. They don't make a lot of these anymore, I guess. But the I guess you should ask who runs delinquent camps. Authority figures of some kind, right? So it would have to be somebody that represents some kind of authority that is taking it upon themselves to punish people extrajudicially. If she just did something that was kind of bad, wouldn't she go to a normal camp? So why did she go to a special?
Make it a sort of king.
Oh, the king of the center of the earth, maybe? Or maybe she's related to the king of the center of the earth, or she's descended from the ancient royalty of the planet, or something like that. Something could really jazz up the logline a little bit along those lines, and also clarify why this character.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna stick with the king for now. Can you put a king in there? Let's see.
Okay, that could.
A camp at the center of the earth, run by the king. A king.
Sure, you'll figure it out. I'm sure that you'll have lots of ideas that sprout from that. So I'm not going to edit the logline in real time, but I think that you're onto something there. I think that explore that a little more, and you'll find the hook of the story.
All right.
Thanks for this. We have 20 minutes. We have time to do a couple more. Let me pause and just ask, are there any questions so far from anyone? Do we all get what we're doing? Do we all get how a logline works? Are we all seeing the kind of things that we need, the questions that we need to be answering? Hope so. By next weekend, try to have worked on your logline with the feedback that you got today. And during the week, you can actually, there's lots of places that you can share for feedback, like our feedback channel, where you can post your logline and you can get extra feedback in the interim if you make iterative changes to it or something like that. So you'll have plenty of time to work on this by next week. Let's look at our last couple. Looks like we have one from Joe Toole we'll start with, and then we'll go to Slappy McBaseface, or is it McBassface? All right, we'll start with Joe Toole.
Hey,
Hi there.
I just wanted to wrap it up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. After his favorite painting goes missing, socially anxious security guard must enlist the help of a reckless actress to teach him how to convincingly play a police detective and track him down.
All right, this is a new angle on this logline. I think this is working pretty well. Let me read it again. So, after his favorite painting goes missing, a socially anxious security guard must enlist the help of a reckless actress to teach him how to play a police detective to track it down. My question would be, why can't he just go to the police? Or why is an actress the right person to teach him how to be a detective?
Yeah, I mean, those are kind of details that are a little hard to explain in the logline.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple reasons. Like, his dad is a policeman, and he doesn't. Essentially, if his dad knows that, I don't know how to explain. I'll skip over that part. But I guess there's some details with this that don't make a whole lot of sense just yet. But the main reason was essentially that she was like his first. She was the last person that he saw in the gallery when it went missing. So she's his initial like lead suspect, and so it just kind of falls into place, if that makes sense.
Okay. I think I see. Yeah, I think I see what you mean. It just, the last thing it's missing is just stakes. I mean, what happens if he doesn't get it?
Yeah, it's funny because that's the main one that I'm battling with. So I mean, I kind of already embraced the fact that the stakes are probably. I mean, one of my comps in my head structurally is something like Whiplash. So, yeah. So there's a few things. Yeah, Nacho's highlighted one of them. So like, one of the big things is that the painting goes missing on his watch, so he feels responsible for it. The second would be that, as Nacho mentions, that he kind of gets blamed largely for the missing painting, and even potentially becomes a suspect for it. So a lot of it is just, a lot of the thing that the main character is dealing with is just sort of, I think that, because a lot of it's just it's social pressure, and so he kind of just wants to be deemed of value, and so it's really just like trying to validate his worth in some sense, and so he feels like this is just a complete attack on that, and so he just kind of wants to feel validated and redeemed in the eyes of the people around him, and so he kind of takes it upon himself to feel like, well, if he fixes this in some sense, right, everything will go back to normal. The biggest thing on top of that, though, and this is the thing I'm really kind of struggling with, is it's like, I've realized that the stakes of the story, it sounds so unrelated, but the big thing I know with the character is that he doesn't want things to change, and the big thing that he's afraid of is essentially having the fact that he's going to get he thinks in some sense that he's supposed to be getting kicked out at the end of the year. So he lives at home with his parents. So the one is the police officer, another is she's an artist in some sense. And the idea is meant to be in some sense that he feels like he has to keep. He has to, for example. So the big thing I'm thinking is he's either going to get fired or he does get fired. I'm leaning towards the fact that he gets fired initially. And so the big point is meant to be that he has to keep that a secret from his parents in some sense, because he feels in some way that that's going to lead to him getting kicked out. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense just why that would be the case just yet, but part of the point was meant to be that if he thinks if he finds his painting, he'll get his job back as well, which will prevent him from having to deal with that.
He thinks that, or
and
that's
so
true?
I'm just kind of, well, well, that's the big thing. I'd like it to be true, but logistically, it just kind of doesn't make sense at this point. Like, why losing your job would lead to you getting kicked out. If anything, it would probably lead to the opposite, right? It's like you have nothing, so we're not going to kick you out.
Some parents might,
but
really strict parents might feel that way, I guess.
Right, exactly. And so I'm just I guess I just need to find a more specific way of articulating that. But as you've mentioned, a lot of the stuff that I write has got very internal stakes, and so it's trying to find a way to externalize that. So if you have any suggestions, I know there's not a lot to go off of. If you have any random weird suggestions that might spark anything, much like Nacho has sort of done, I'm very much open for suggestions. But yeah.
My suggestions are increase the stakes and clarify what the either the ticking clock or what his tangible goal is that will, like you said, it might get him his job back. That would be, sure, I understand that. Or he's a suspect and he has to clear his name. I get that as well. Something like that should be in the logline to clarify why the character is so invested in the story and why he actually must. Because if we use the word must, and we did right there, then that's sort of saying that it's really important that this happen. It's not just they want to or decide to.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I have at the top of my head, but again, I didn't really know. I think I've even included it in logline at some point. It just didn't really make sense with the context. But the painting that goes missing is there's essentially at the end of that week. I don't even know if it's going to be a whole week yet. It might even be like a few days. But there's a gallery that's opening up at the end of this year, and essentially the opening paintings that they had. That was one of them that they were. All of the paintings in the gallery were essentially meant to be there, and everything was meant to go flawlessly. Now that this thing's going missing, they need to find a replacement for it. And so, part of his big fear as well is that it's going to get kind of permanently replaced. And despite him not finding it, it might also not be enough in some sense. And so, I guess like wrapped up at the end of the year is some idea that. Like the gallery, I don't know how to explain it, but the gallery itself is losing visitors, and so one of the things that he's particularly fond of is this particular art style, and it also happens to be the least popular art style in the gallery, and so it's almost like he thinks that this thing is going to be huge to get people reinvested in this thing that he loves in some sense. But again, as you're sort of saying, how to externalize that. Kind of difficult because it's not like this is anything that will happen, just rather something he hopes will happen. And how to make that tangible is the thing that's kind of difficult. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's the only thing I'm kind of struggling with. I've got a lot of the elements. It's just, quite clearly, it's not implicit enough to actually be a must, as opposed to just a desire. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I'm still struggling with that a little bit. I do think once I clarify it, it'll make a bit more sense.
Great.
Yeah, if you don't have any more points on that, I'm happy for you to move on to Slappy. But,
sure. Yeah, that's most of what I got for now. Just if he's going to get his job back, that's one thing. If he's going to clear his name and avoid getting in trouble, that's another easy stake to include. So just make it clear why the character is invested in this and where's the urgency coming from.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's do our last one, I think. Swipe right.
Yeah, okay. After a rough breakup with his girlfriend of 5 years, Maddie, the reluctant nice guy, is thrusted into the world of online dating by his hopelessly inept guide / brother, only to match with a hacker with trust issues who turns his life upside down.
I like it. I'm trying to make sure I understand. He matches with a hacker, like you mean she somehow hacked the app to match with him, or you're saying she just happens to be a hacker, somebody that he matches with?
Yeah, she's a hacker, and basically she's got trust issues, and so all of her relationships have failed because she has trust issues, and so she doesn't observe boundaries, and she's trying to work on that. Mm-hmm. And she's out, and she's also using the dating apps as well.
Okay. So you're saying he goes on a date with her not knowing that she's
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And you say she turns his life upside down. How exactly?
So basically, his brother is getting him to use this app. He finally convinces him to use the app, and then he meets the hacker, and he likes her, but his brother is like, don't really. This is the first girl you met. You need to keep going out there, and you keep doing things. And so she kind of realizes that he is still using the dating app, and when she figures that out, then she starts hacking into his phone, and she messes up all of his dates, and just really like basically she takes information from his phone and destroys like every date that he goes on after that because she really likes him and they were really hitting it off. But when she finds out, she goes in to destroy his life, and then basically we tie it back up where they get back together.
They do after that.
Yeah, but she's gonna find out that his brother, he was going on the dates, but not desiring to go on the dates. He really wanted to stay with her, but his brother was pushing him to use the app, saying it was the first time. So
Okay, I think so. This is a rom-com, but where one of them is actually the villain for most of the movie.
not really because they're well for most of the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's a good
no,
idea.
I won't say not most of the movie, but she is the villain because it's going to be a portion because there's going to be a portion where she doesn't know, and then when she finds out, then she's going to be the villain. So she's going to be a good match, but then she's going to find out some issues and slip back into her hacking into like not observing boundaries, and then when she finds out why he was doing it, they work things out.
Okay, but I guess, and maybe this is I'll start with the logline, then I'll just go to like some story suggestions or questions for you. So with just the logline, I think you started it too early. You've given us two catalysts. The first catalyst you gave us was the breakup. The second catalyst you gave us was that the guy goes into online, starts dating on apps. Actually, I guess the third catalyst is that he meets this girl. So you need to start the logline a little later. So a reluctant nice guy. I think you can leave the brother thing out of this. So a reluctant, a newly single nice guy matches with the seemingly perfect girl. But then when he gets on her bad side, it turns out she's a hacker, and now she sets out to ruin his life. And he's trying to keep his head above water. Like something like that, I feel like does that sound like your story?
Yeah.
Okay. So try it like that. Start a little later. We don't need all the setup in the logline. The other thing is that, and I'm not a big rom-com person, so I'm not the best to weigh in on this, so I'm going to get the room to help me to weigh in on this too. But you're going to struggle to get us to invest in their relationship if for most of the movie she's acting so antagonistically towards him, hacking into his personal information, committing crimes against him, and then by the end we're supposed to root for them to get back together and believe that they can have a happy, healthy relationship after that. I mean, it's a cool idea to have them be directly at odds like this, and I love the idea of a rom-com where the seemingly perfect person turns into the villain. But then I don't know if that fit. I'm not sure if this is a traditional rom-com anymore, which is okay. Like, it doesn't have to be one, but it's a lot to ask of the audience in my mind to root for them to once they get back together be like, oh, good for them. I'm gonna be like, she is a hacker. She hacked him. She's horrible. So I guess that's just like my first read on that, or my first impression of that. Maybe the room can anyone else weigh in on, especially people who watch rom-coms? Would you struggle to invest at all if most of the movie we're watching one of them who's described as a kind of a paranoid criminal? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, what if like she has a really good reason, like she's some activist hacker trying to bring down this tech CEO is the CEO, right, for some reason, and then like she goes into the relationship planning to bring him down or expose some conspiracy or something like that, right? But she they fall for each other over the course of, and then of course in the end of Act 2, like he finds out and whatever, they break up.
There's some ideas for you. There's some more in the chat as well. Somebody says it could be they initially don't like each other, but they come around. That's a common trend. I'm not sure how that fits into this story exactly, but yeah, that is how these sometimes work. Right. Anyway, so I'm not sure what the answers are to that, or I'm not sure how to solve that issue. But I think for a story where we're ultimately rooting for them to get together, like the conceit of the rom-com genre, as I understand it, is that we're rooting for them to be together and that they're kind of perfect for each other. I mean, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. They really hit it off in the dating portion. Right. But again, his brother is pushing him. The brother is the drive, but behind him continuing to use the app, and he has no desire. He really likes this girl. But his brother is kind of like edging him to continue using the app to look, and he's suffering throughout. His brother is like terrible at it as you go through the story, and you can see how his life is ruined, is basically bad and stuck in a bad life because he's horrible at it. And by listening to his brother, his life is jacked up. But once they work things out, and she figures out why he was still doing it, and there's going to be messages where she's going to end up finding messages on his phone that say that's talking to his brother later, talking about how he really just wants to stay with this girl, but his brother keeps edging him on, so egging him on, so she's gonna find out that way. But later, it's gonna be a reveal.
So they the entire time they're claiming to be exclusive, or he promised to be exclusive with her. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
They are. Okay, so it seems like he's cheating on her.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, I mean, we would root for her a little bit more. I mean, we would believe that she is at least justified to some extent in striking back at him. But it should seem pretty bad. I mean, because it's the norm when people go on some dates online to go on some dates with other people. So we're going to have to really believe that they committed to be exclusive. Otherwise, she's just going to seem absolutely crazy. And if she seems absolutely crazy, we're not going to root for them to get together.
Yeah, gotcha.
So just be careful with that. It's a good idea, though. I think that there's definitely something here. Any last questions on this one?
Nope, I'm good.
Awesome. Thank you for this. We have one more from Jamie. The Novelist or Steal? Or maybe those are two potential titles. You want to read this out, Jamie? I picked this because the comps are Napoleon Dynamite and The Punisher, and that's the weirdest combination of comps I think I've ever seen, and I have to know what that means. Go ahead.
Okay,
I heard you. Go ahead. Oh, maybe we lost you. Try again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. The title's either The Novelist or Steal. Genre action, comps, Napoleon Dynamite. Only because I couldn't think of a good frail nerd movie. And The Punisher. So the logline is: a frail, nerdy writer of a fictitious action hero suffers a brutal attack, resulting in partial amnesia, and wakes up believing he is the very character he created. A hard-boiled vigilante known as John Steele.
Okay. I love it. Is it a comedy?
It could be like an action comedy. Not sure yet.
Because if you're picking Napoleon Dynamite as one of your comps, this is the thing I mentioned earlier, where you don't want to throw people way too far off with the tone of your comps. So if you do intend it to be funny, and this could be funny. First of all, I think a better comp for you would be Youth in Revolt. Have you seen that?
Youth in Revolt? No, I haven't seen that one.
Check that out. That's with Michael Cera from 2009 or 10, I think is when that came out. And that's kind of a little bit of a similar setup. It's not that too similar or anything, but just you'll see, if you watch it, you'll see why that's a better comp than Napoleon. In any case, a frail, nerdy writer of a fictitious action hero suffers a brutal attack resulting in partial amnesia and wakes up believing he's the character he created. And then he must what?
Well, as the vigilante, he's gonna take on a gang.
The gang that attacked him. So it's a revenge story.
No, not a gang. He wakes up and he really believes he's this character he created, so he has no memory.
Right.
Life.
Then what's he doing in the movie?
And everything changes. Like the way he acts. Like normally he would act like like he talks like kind of with a soft voice, but when he wakes up as John Steele, he kind of talks with a kind of like deep voice. What happened to me?
I'm with you.
He talks like that. So when he wakes up, he doesn't know what's going on. He actually believes he just completed one of his missions and is back now. And he wakes up and doesn't understand what's going on. But he kind of like stays at a rundown, crime-infested neighborhood in a motel room and looks out the window and sees all the happenings outside and sees what's going on. And there's the drug house there. There's things going on, and all the neighborhood is, they're scared that like families that they don't go out, and he just decides to take on this gang that's running the whole neighborhood.
But it's not the gang that attacked him?
No, it's not. It's not a gang that attacked him. It was these two criminals that he later gets later on at the end of the film.
Oh, at the end. But he doesn't remember who they are because he lost his memory.
Well, then I'm going to have to tell the end of the story, but he does get his full memory back.
He does. Okay.
Yes.
So, I like the general setup here, but it's feeling like once we get past the catalyst, him just deciding I'm going to take down a gang may not necessarily be the strongest goal for him to have. I mean, that's why my first question was, naturally, it's the gang that attacked him, right? And it's a revenge story, and he's trying to now, or at least it ends up being that the gang that hurt him is the one that he ends up going head-to-head with. It's like RoboCop almost, isn't it? I mean, isn't this what happens in RoboCop, where the bad guys, maim this cop, he ends up getting robot limbs, and now he ends up becoming the super cop that now needs to take down that same criminal that harmed him. But your antagonist is not connected with your inciting incident. Do you see what I mean? And that is leading to like a weird sort of like disconnect in the like, this feels more like a TV version of the idea. And in a TV show, this would be like the origin story of this kind of superhero-ish vigilante character who now is going to take on a new criminal every week. But in yours, the catalyst should be connected to the antagonist somehow. It doesn't have to be that he's getting revenge against the people that did it to him necessarily, but I think that you just need a more personal investment or goal for your character. Otherwise, it's like, well, why did he take on that gang and why not another gang? Or why did he take on that gang and not drug dealers or not terrorists? Or why doesn't he go to a war zone and help out in Russia, or in the Ukraine? You know what I mean? Like, there's a million things he could do. We're asking, I guess, what is the investment and connection and urgency behind him doing this one specific thing? So I'm going to ask I'm going to suggest central relationship or villain. Bring them out in the logline, and the story will start to clarify, and those things will start to click into place a lot more.
Okay. Well, yeah. You said just put on the log line, even if it's not polished yet.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
So,
you don't have to know any of these answers. It's okay. You have the whole week to work on this more, and you have plenty more time. But those would just be my first thoughts. Find either a central relationship or villain, and I think it will start to clarify what's motivating the character a little bit more.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, great. And nice job with this. I love the basic idea of nerdy writer becomes his character. That's awesome. So there's something very strong there. Once you have the right journey for him to go on, it'll be a great premise overall.
Okay.
Thank you for this. Any last questions?
No.
Cool. Thanks a lot. We're at the end of our class. This is going to be meeting next week, same time. This is Fridays, 6 to 8 on ScriptCamp. We have plenty of other free events coming up, like Writing Action and Adventure tomorrow, 12 to 2 on WordCamp. You should, if you have worked on your logline in this class and you intend to be in the bootcamp, your goals for next time are to finalize your logline. Come back next week for that week 1 class. And also, you're going to continue reading scripts, or maybe you've never read a script before and you're going to start reading scripts. We have a resource that's going to be in the chat in a moment called The Blacklist. The Blacklist is a collection of the sort of most liked spec scripts in Hollywood any given year. There's going to be some on there from famous writers. Some of them are by new writers. In any case, most of them are going to be worth reading for one reason or another. So you definitely should be reading at least one script by next week, because I'm going to ask, what did you read? What did you notice? What did you like? What did you learn? Things like that. It's not a test. I just want to hear about what you've been reading. So yeah, get the logline ready. Start filling out that sketchbook with all your ideas related to this project and start finding things that get you excited to get going. And you want to read that script and be ready to talk about it next time. Any last questions before we call it a night? There's the blacklist in the chat. I would copy that link now. If you've not already done so, you will find a lot of scripts, and make sure that you open the guide document, which is usually labeled with a 0 at the beginning of each list, because it has descriptions of every script and information on the writer and the management and all that stuff too. So pick out, make a list, make a queue of scripts for yourself to read, and start reading consistently and actively. You can click interested in the chat on that preview thumbnail for the upcoming class, and you'll be notified before that class starts. We hope to see everyone a week from today at this same time slot. All right, have a great night, folks. Hopefully, we're all excited to get going on our movies, and we'll see you soon.
The link to the blacklist, is it a Google Drive link?
That's right.
Okay, it says I need to send a request to get access.
Yeah, just hit the request button.
Okay.
Approve it.
Yep, we'll get you access. Don't worry. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
We're going to head out. Let me know any other questions you have. You can email Connor at scriptcamp.net, or you can send me a message, or Nacho a message on Discord. Nacho is our co-founder and runs lots of events around here too. We'd be glad to help you out and make sure we to get you on track if you're having trouble signing up or anything else. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your evening.